What's going on, everyone? My name is Tom from Dreadlabs, and today we're going to take a look at 3 designers that flip the same idea.
Dreadlabs.
Alright guys, so this is actually a first video for me where I do a design video, but I'm not the designer in the video. So I had this idea a couple of months ago where I wanted to see how many designers could do the same idea or the same briefing and have a completely different outcome of it. So that's why I wanted to start this video series. Basically to give you guys some inspiration and to teach you guys that creative freedom leads to very different results, which is also really fun to watch. So I had this idea because of Andrew Huang. He's a music YouTuber, but his series is called 4 Producers Flip the Same Sample. Basically doing the same thing, but instead of having a briefing, they flip like one sample of a music song and they make a whole track with it. So yeah, shout out to Andrew Huang for giving me this idea, I guess. So without further ado, I'm going to talk about the briefing and the 3 designers that are featured in this episode. Alright, so the designers featured in this episode are Datura Hex, Mun15h and Spitfist Illustrations. Datura Hex is probably most known for his insane 3D works. He also does a lot of NFT work. Mun15h, or Mun15h in short, is known for his everyday designs on Instagram, where he basically posted really sick designs for every day of the year. And finally we have Spitfist Illustrations, very much known for his super trippy style, his crazy illustrations and his insane layer styles. Right, so now we're going to talk about the briefing. So basically what I told these designers is the prompt for this artwork is an Oni Hanya mask. An Oni is a demon in Japanese folklore. You've probably seen these masks around because they're very cool and I've been seeing them everywhere for a couple of years now. They're mainly used in Japanese no theater. I'm hoping that I pronounced that correctly. Basically, they represent a jealous female demon. So the briefing is that a fictional band would like to use an Oni Hanya mask in their visuals for either merchandise or their live shows or whatever. And these guys have complete freedom on what they want to do with this Oni mask. So what we're going to take a look at today is the 3 end results of these designers. We're also lucky enough to see a little bit of their process. And yeah, overall, we're probably going to have a very inspiring time here. So yeah, sorry for the long intro, but let's dive into this. So we're going to start out with Datura Hex's ones, and they came up with 3 results, as we're going to see in the screen right here. Super crazy. Like I said, this guy is very much known for his insane 3D works. So as you can probably tell from looking at this, working on some crazy 3D stuff like this requires the most out of your computer. That's also the reason why Datura Hex wasn't able to record his process, sadly. He did, however, send me a couple of screenshots. We're going to take a look at that while he explains his thought process a little bit. So Datura is saying that he really likes the Oni team that Dreadlabs has provided, as it was a fun and inspiring team for him to work on. He's a huge fan of Japanese culture, their amazing art and mythologies, and this also means that he is a huge fan of Ghost in the Shell, Akira, Evangelion, all of these crazy, very early on anime series that basically define the anime genre. And that was also what he wanted to implement into his work here, basically combining the classic mythology with the retro modern vibes that these animes give away. So he came up with an Oni that would kind of exist in the universe of Akira, Evangelion, Ghost in the Shell basically. So the first premise that he gave himself is that he wanted the Oni to look sexy and deadly, which is really fun. So he started in Daz Studio selecting an appropriate model. He brought it into Blender, made some cuts to the face in edit mode with a knife tool and separated out portions of the face and then separated them into different parts. So what happened next is he took these separated parts into ZBrush, added some surface lines and other details, and after he was happy with the results, he made some other interesting organic robot forms to fill in the other empty spaces in ZBrush, and he took them all back to Blender. So he also tried adding some typography in ZBrush, and it was for the first time for him, and it reads Yugen. So Yugen basically translates to a mysterious feeling of beauty. I hope I pronounced Yugen correctly, and I hope I explained that well enough. And if you need some context, maybe you should Google it, because it's quite an abstract thing, because it really depends on the context when using this word. Anyway, so what happens next is Datura added textures and mirrored forms in Blender, and it was also rendered in Blender with cycles. And then he also drew another lettering in sharp chrome style to complement the white poster version of the render. And that lettering reads Chrysalis. I keep saying this, but you guys know that I am horrible at pronunciation of words. Sorry for that. Anyways, so a chrysalis is basically a hard-shell pupa in which a transformation into a moth or a butterfly appears. So the reason why Datura chose for this lettering is because the character had a hard shell and exterior, but he also views this character as potentially having a sensible and personality, hence the closed eyes and the kind of sad expression. And in my personal opinion, this also ties in really well with the jealous nature of Oni Hanya. And in the end, he added some typography texture and with some minor color editing in Photoshop. So yeah, that's a little bit on the process of Datura, and I gotta say, this is insane. This is absolutely insane. I love this so much, and I'm really happy that he found the time to join in on this collaboration and actually be able to share his own personal personal work based on a briefing that I gave him. So yeah, shout out to Datura. If you want to follow him on Instagram, there's a link in the description. And with all of that being said, let's move on to the next one. So the next artist is Mun15h. If you are on Instagram, you might know him already because he posts a design every day. He does a lot of different digital work, and I think he's most known for his chrome types that he posts. So yeah, let's just take a look at what he came up with. Alright, so in the literal sense, Ariman just made this into a mask, a very, very polished chrome looking mask. It's actually on a person, which looks really, really, really cool. I also really like the laser eyes, also gives into that very futuristic look. And what I really, really like is that Datura and Ariman are both going for this same futuristic look, but they ended up with completely different results. So yeah, really, really, really cool. Ariman actually has a time-lapse recorded, and he also recorded a little bit of his own voice to talk about what he did and talk about his directions. So yeah, let's take a look at that real quick.
Hey guys, it's Mun15h here, or you may know me as Mun15h or Munish on Instagram. I'm going to quickly run you through the design that I did for the prompt that Tom gave us for this video. So the second I read through the prompt, I was like, okay, I'm definitely thinking of Yoru from Valorant and the mask that he uses when he enters his ult. So I was like, yeah, I'm definitely going to do something on the basis of that. So my goal was to make a human render and use the mask in like a cyberpunk way, just to take something that comes from ancient heritage and culture and incorporate it into like something that's more dystopian future types, just to like use it in a very contrasting way. And that's just something that I wanted to do, and I feel like it's trendy, so I just went into that. So the first thing I do is take a model from Dash 3D, and it's very easy to use. You just need to take a human and just export it. And then for the mask, I go to cgtrader.com and I purchase a mask. Sometimes, you know, just to save time, it's not the end of the world if you purchase certain 3D assets. I'm also not an expert at sculpting, I would say, so it would take me too long, and it's really important to understand that you can't do every single thing as a designer for every single design that you do. Especially for clients, when they expect you to bring results fast, it does become hard to do everything from scratch. And it's not the end of the world if you purchase an asset here or there and use an asset here and there. Just make sure that you're aware of the licenses that you have associated with the asset that you have, and make sure that you're allowed to use it for that specific use. And aside from that, like, it's alright, not the end of the world. Anyway, so I import the mask and the woman into Cinema 4D. I texture her using these custom textures I made myself using Travis David's textures for DAZ models. And yeah, so once I have the basic scene set up, I start playing around with textures. I give the mask a metallic look. I mess around with the lights. I give the eyes of the lady's eyes like glowing look, just to give it that cyberpunk like vaporwave kind of feel. And yeah, then I just I start thinking, okay, there's definitely a chrome element involved here. I love working with chrome. If you know my work, you would probably know that already. So after that, I start trying to mess around with like a metal mohawk of sorts, like with these shapes on her head. Like, I just wanted to give her like as much of a dystopian cyberpunk look I could. So yeah, that's what I went with. Then the next thing that I try to do is I try to give her like braid, and I don't really know if it was the best idea, because it just ends up looking a little weird considering the fact that it's evident that she doesn't have hair on the top of her head. So yeah, so I just messed around. I tried to instead add some more metal shapes, but then I felt like it was losing the mohawk vibe that I wanted it to have. I even watched a tutorial on YouTube. Like, you know, sometimes when you're designing, you're literally watching a tutorial as you go. So, and that's perfectly okay. Like, you know, sometimes you do need to follow tutorials. But ultimately, I kind of decided to go against that. And then I had the idea of using like a PNG of like a group of wires and like attaching it to her head as if it's like coming out of her head. So I rendered the design out. I took it in Photoshop and I put the wires in through Photoshop. I just like do some micro adjustments to the woman's how the wire comes out of her head, the shape of the wires, the shading of the wires, just to bring it an added like feeling of realism, so that it just like doesn't feel like an inorganic part of the design. And once I felt like the woman and the wires were pretty much like looking like they're supposed to be together, then I started working around with the background. You can already see that I've added like a purple tone with like some smoke behind. Again, smokes come from like this asset pack that I purchased, so you just add them in the background. And then the last finishing touch I do is I take these like raindrops and I kind of like twirl them around to make, and then give them like a purple color and a glow, just to give it that like cyberpunk kind of vibe. And then the last step that I do here is I use the camera raw filter to add clarity, and this brings so much detail into the woman's skin. It's unbelievable. So camera raw filter, for especially for human renders, can save you a lot of time in the final compositing. Sometimes you really need to composite in the more traditional manner, where you're taking every single composite, like the specular map, the alpha map, and all of that. But in certain cases, especially for human renders, I feel just turning up the clarity on a render does wonders. So definitely try that out if you're trying to save time. Again, this was a very quick little design that I did. I'm used to using these shortcuts, so I wanted to, because I do daily designs, so I wanted to use this opportunity to show you how you can cut time and put out amazing content faster if that's what you want to do. But ultimately, it all comes down to learning as a designer and learning to do new things, different things all the time, and that's kind of my personal motto as a designer. And yeah, I hope you like what I did with this project, and cheers. Yeah, thank you.
So yeah, super great in detail explanation by Ariman. But I also really like is that he shared a couple of very valuable tips regarding assets and saving time as a freelancer. So thank you so much, Ariman. I really love this work. Sadly, I didn't know about the Valorant thing because I don't really play that video game. But regardless of that, super cool. I really love this work. So yeah, shout out to Ariman. If you want to follow him, there's a link in the description down below. Alright, so the last design is by my fellow Dutchman, Spitfist Illustrations. He's known for his super trippy illustrations and his crazy asset pack, available on Dreadlabs.net, by the way. Anyways, let's take a look at what he made. Alright, so right off the bat, we're gonna take a look at this and say that this is a crazy amount of work. So big shout out to Spitfist for taking the time to actually work this out in the very much craziest way possible. So we can see a lot of illustration, we can see a lot of 3D work, animation. So yeah, let's take a look at how Spitfist did this. Alright, so I'm gonna read out loud what Spitfist wrote here. So, Oni in Chinese means dead or ancestral spirit, and although it is classified as a demon, it is not necessarily an evil one, and that's why it chose red and blue color scheme, symbolizing the fight between good and evil, or between desire and revenge. Hanya is the ghost of a young woman, and the man that she loved deeply wounded her, so she comes back from the dead to satisfy her desire for revenge. So Spitfist came up with a card game concept. So in this card game concept, the wisdom card can be used for both good and evil, and can only be found deep in the wilderness. You can only obtain this legendary card by following the whispers in the forest. The project is shaped like this because I wanted to give an impression of the landscape this demon would wander in. This is how she sees the world. Every glowing object is a temptation in either good or bad. So it's also very cool that there's a concept behind this. It's leaning away a little bit from the band logo, but honestly that's fine with me because I just love this project. And it's also very cool that there's a concept behind it. So now let's take a look at the actual process of designing this. So the sketching and illustration was done in Fire Alpaca. I'm not really familiar with that software, we can see it in the timelapse here. And the coloring and graphic design is done in Photoshop. And then Spitfist also did some background details to the card here. Then he took the card into 3D, created a frame for it, and he separated all the layers to create some depth to it. Then the landscape and the fitting elements were made in Blender. Then it was time to create some animations for the final design, and the plan was as following. Panorama shaped pose with a video showcasing the card with the Blender animation incorporated in the landscape. So then Spitfist put it all together in Photoshop. He combined one of those loose bits in one panorama, added some fancy fog to set the final atmosphere. And as you can see in the time lapse here, there's a final illustration layer here done in Fire Alpaca to create even more depth and basically endless details into this crazy illustration work. So to finish the project, he added the animation and timelapse to fit the scene, created some assets for the final videos, and he was done. So one final word from Spitfist is that he tried to combine illustration, 3D graphic design in one atmosphere to shape the object to its full potential. And he worked on this project on and off for about 6 weeks. And it was a very fun challenge and he learned a lot. So thank you so much, Spitfist, for creating the time to actually work on this. I'm really happy with the result. And if you don't follow this guy already, follow him on Instagram. There's a link down in the description. Alright guys, so that about wraps it up. So yeah, very big shout out to all of these 3D designers, Datura Hex, Mun15h and Spitfist, for taking the time to work on these crazy designs. For me personally, it was super inspiring and it definitely cheered me up, and I was really happy to make a different video for a change where I didn't have to design but I could inspire myself. And I really hope this inspired you too. And I know I plug them a lot now, but be sure to give these guys a follow because they really deserve all of your support here. So yeah, if you feel challenged by this, the briefing is in the description if you want to make something with it. Maybe it could be a good training for you as a designer or creative. And if you want to share it with me, use the hashtag Dreadlabs, or you can just send me a DM on Instagram. If you want to take a closer look at these works, you can find them on my Instagram and the respective artists' Instagram as well. And all of that being said, I want to give a shout out to the people that support my channel, my Patreons. Because of my Patreons, I'm actually able to make these videos for you guys. So the more Patreons basically means that I can do this full time, keep the channel up and running, and basically give you more tutorials and more videos. But that's not everything, because if you become a patron of mine, you'll get access to all of the project files from all of my tutorials, a 15% discount in my asset web store, and an exclusive Discord role on my server. If you go one tier up, you'll also get access to the full episodes of my Starting a Clothing Brand series and the respective project files for that series. So I'm really eager to see what you think of this video. If you want to see more of this, let me know in the comments down below, leave a like and subscribe if you haven't already. And with all of that being said, this was Tom from Dreadlabs tuning out. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next video.